podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
Good morning. It's Sunday morning as I record. Chelsea 0, Manchester United 1, and once again, Chelsea failed to turn up for a big game. I think on the face of it, the stats will show you that Chelsea had 21 shots at goal and, we had more of the ball and things like that. But I think when you watch the game and you're immersed in it, you couldn't really see much that we created. Estevão hit the post in the first half. Liam Delap hit the bar in the second half, which was a good header to be fair. And I'm coming at this quite calmly because I feel as though if I rant and rave, it's probably gonna. Yeah, not going to be the best listen in the world, but that might come as the voice note progresses. But yeah, very, very disappointing night for Chelsea once again. I think you can probably hear in my voice that kind of lack of passion. But I think we're so bewildered by this complete and utter embarrassment of a season, which it's turning out to be, that it's very hard to get any sort of enjoyment out of these games. Currently, we've lost 6 out of 7 matches, and it's desperate times. It's absolutely desperate times. I've got to say, I'm not even really. I can't be bothered to even speak about Liam Rosenior. I can't be bothered to hear what he's got to say. I haven't looked at his post-match comments or quotes this week because everything he does just fucking annoys the life out of me. So I'll probably leave Chris to maybe dissect his quotes in his voice note after this one, and maybe he's had a chance to sit through what he had to say. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he doesn't even want to. But I feel as though that if I hear what he has to say, I'm just going to want to punch myself in the face multiple times because it's like talking to a robot when you hear him. And even though he comes out with some what you class as decent quotes, and I think that Chris and I said when he joined the club that being a Londoner, being from England, and the fact that he seemed quite chatty, that sort of person, you thought like maybe we would get some interesting stuff from him. The stuff that he says, I think he thinks is interesting, but it's a lot of a waffle. And I just can't bear what I couldn't bear to bring myself to listen to him speak about that we were desperately unlucky and we should have won the game and we're such a good team and this player and that player are so good. And I'll be like, oh, mate, just stop trolling me with all your shite. I can't be doing with it. Yeah, the game itself was one of just pure and utter disappointment. Chris messaged me. Was it a half-time? I think it was a half-time. And just said we're 1-0 down. We lose 1-0. He said we are not getting back to this game. We do not win this game. We don't come back at all. And that proved to be the case. I think Liam Delap is desperately unlucky to not make it 1-1 with that header. But really, this is what we're going with. A player that scored 1 goal with 30 Premier League games is scary. And when João Pedro doesn't play, we seem to have nothing. There are a lot of players I think they need calling out. I mean, the ones that we've defended and I think the ones that we have constantly they're the ones we've given a real bollocking to. Players like Tosin and Badiashile, they've come in for real criticism. Fofana's another one, and Neto to some point, and he's going to get some as well today, to be fair. But I think there has to be a real serious conversation around people like Cole Palmer, because I thought his performance not tonight, because this is the following morning, but his performance last night was nothing short of disgusting. I thought what summed it up for me was his free kick in the second half. That might be the worst free kick I've ever seen, a direct free kick. My wife went, what the fuck was that? And again, not to bore you, and I won't come over the same comments because I said maybe a month ago that she knows when I'm starting to tap out from a season when I can't even be bothered to raise my voice. And last night we pretty much sat through that game with complete and utter silence. And more or less went to bed straight after the game because I just could not be asked to even discuss it or dissect it or even do a voice note about it because I just didn't have the strength within me to do it. And I felt like I needed the evening to just go to bed, sleep on it and come back with something this morning, which we're going to attempt to try and do. I'll start with a slight positive. I thought Estevão's performance for 20 minutes was very, very good. I thought we got him on the ball. quite a lot. It seems he was the player that we were going to on the right-hand side. He always seems to want to get in behind, and I thought his play for 20 minutes was excellent, and he was a real threat. That shot that hit the post was really, really good. And I'll be honest with you, if I think he stays on, I think Chelsea may even win the game. I think he was that important. I think he was the best player on the pitch by a country mile. And obviously, before he got the hook in that opening 20 minutes, as he was running through for that attempted chance that we had, you just saw him stumble in real time, and you went, oh, it didn't look great, like he jarred a knee or something. Hopefully it's not a hamstring, because goodness me, that's going to be a nightmare if it is. But yeah, he just sort of jarred something, went down, and you're thinking, is it just treatment? And then you could just tell, just the way his face was, I just thought that looks more than it should be. And yes, he was taken off, and the sort of threat from anything else from our team kind of drifted away, I hate to say. I will give a little shout out to Enzo Fernandez. Now look, I'll let you guys decide if you think Enzo Fernandez is and should be part of the team. And, you know, there'll be those that say, oh, he disrespected the club, so I don't really care for him. I'm going to boo him when I see him. There'll be those that say, oh, he's just frustrated. The club are going nowhere fast and he wants to get a move out. You know, I don't blame him. So look, I don't care what camp you fall in. I really don't. I'm not that sort of person that kind of holds anything against anybody. If you feel a certain way, then you go for it. Personally, I'm not as arsed either way. I think if Chelsea were doing so well and doing a lot better, I think there's a case to say maybe we take him out the team and let him rot. But you have to understand it's a business. They can't do that. You know, he's worth £107 million on our balance sheet. So if we just ostracize him and keep him out the side altogether, then his value will just decrease even more than it already has done. So there's an element of you have to try and play the game with him slightly. But, you know, if he gets a few boos and the crowd aren't quite as with him as they used to be, then that's kind of something that he has to work on. If he wants to stay at the club a long time, then he has to kind of gain that trust back. But until then, no, you have to accept that, no, you're not going to be captain. It was very, obviously, visually the tunnel straight away. I was like, oh, Caicedo's captain. So Enzo's lost that responsibility straight away. But I thought his performance in the first half particularly was very good. I actually thought we missed him. It was, you know, I haven't seen... It's weird when you don't watch a player for a while, even for a couple of games, and then he came back into the side. I thought his passes that were progressing forward were really, really good. I thought with Estevão, he was definitely our second best player on the night. And yeah, it goes to say a lot when one of those players only played 20 minutes. So yeah, I thought Enzo was very involved. Again, like I say, he was always looking to get the ball forward, but not just willy-nilly. It was opening up like passing lanes and getting the ball through really nicely to our attacking players. But unfortunately, we just weren't good enough on the day to capitalise on anything. So yeah, that's really... Oh no, there is another positive. I thought Jarell Hato was fucking brilliant. I thought he was so good. If anyone's kind of tapped out from the game, which I don't know if you did or you didn't, but you missed something. This boy is magic. Oh my God, he's going to be so good. I hope he's good for us, but he's going to be so good for someone. His ball carrying out of defence is so brilliant. And I thought, it's all very well doing that against Port Vale a couple of weeks ago, but you're now doing that against Man United, and he did it against Man City a couple of times as well last week. He's so good. He's so good. Whether the centre half is going to be his position, I'm going to say no, it's not. But wow, he's like he could end up being like a marauding, like Alonso type player that we had. Whether Chelsea play a system like that, I don't know if we ever will again. But you just sort of see him. Becoming better and better and better. And I got to say, yeah, his performance on the night was superb. And I loved the way that he kept going. Like, he knew the team were losing, we knew we were down, but he never put his head down. He never kind of decided that game was over. He always kept coming and kept going. I had a load of respect for him last night. I thought he was so good. He's fast becoming one of my favourite players, I have to say. And he hasn't had a lot of football for Chelsea, but what I've seen of him, the initial stages, I was like, oh, looks like he's not sure, looks a little bit slow, looks a little bit like the Premier League's too fast for him. And then fast forward to the mistake and the sort of bad game he had against Karabag in the Champions League. I thought, again, another youngster, not quite ready, but he is one that I think certainly in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks has really kind of jumped up ahead of everybody. And yeah, at the back, he's first name on the team sheet for me. So Jura Hato, hats off to you, mate. I thought you were really, really good last time. And then that is really where the positivity ends. And as sad as that sounds, it's just the way it is. We got a player that played 20 minutes who was good. We got a player that came back from suspension from his own club that played well, and a youngster that has sort of grown from the pack through a multitude of injuries. Now looks a really good player, but everybody else I couldn't really give a toss about, quite frankly. It's become a really drab, dry season, and the manager, the buck stops with you. We can't stop conceding goals. We have possession for long periods. We don't do loads with it. We then give us, the ball away for moments in games like every team does. And then within those moments, teams just go up the other end, score, sit back, and then that's us done for the game. And so it happened last night. Man United were fucking terrible. Oh my God, they are so poor. They are so bad. I've said this about Man United for a long time, and my opinion has not changed. And I don't care what anybody says. They are rank bad. And that goes to show where we are, how poor we must be. Because Man United they are as far away from Alex Ferguson's team as I've ever seen. It's terrible. And they have come to the bridge, won 1-0, gone home, and they're going to be really happy with it. They had a centre-back pairing of Heaven and Matswari, or what the fuck his name is. Oh, my God. That's what we couldn't get a goal against that mob. Luke Shaw, Dallo, yuck. Lemons in goal, Lemming or fucking Lemon, whatever his name is. Jesus Christ. It's just so bad. And the goal they score, I mean, Bruno Fernandes just kind of wanders in the right-hand channel, goes past sort of Cucurella quite easily and puts a ball just in an area. It's not a great cross. It's just a sort of a bit of a flick into the box. And Malo Gusto is just standing, looking at Cunha and going, go on then, mate. If you want to have a go, go. Where's the challenge? Oh, Malo Gusto is so bad. He's so bad. Oh, God. I mean, that goal just said everything about Chelsea Football Club. A player that just wandered in, unopposed, crosses a ball to the far post where you have the right back for Chelsea staring at the only threat in the box was Cunha, the only threat, and he's not even that good. And just go near him and you'll clear it. Azpilicueta would have walked in there and just booted that 60 yards up the field. But Malo Gusto just, does that thing where, again, youngsters or whatever you want to call it, they just switch off altogether. They walk in, Cunha puts it in the corner for 1-0. We go off at half time, and nothing really changed. We had a little burst for about 15 minutes in the second half where we hit the bar with Liam Delap, and then we had the one that I think everybody thought was again a really good chance for Fofana when he hits the bar. But for those of you that didn't see the replays, Fofana punches it against the crossbar, so it wouldn't have counted. He did not head it, so you could forget that chance pretty much altogether. And then really, I'm out on it. That's it. Nothing. Just pissing around at the back with it once again. The occasional long pass from Sanchez that goes up to the lap who doesn't win it. Him being out-muscled. I thought, look, if we're being kind, I thought Delap probably had for him, an okay game. He was trying his best to get in amongst it and ruffle some feathers, but he's just not good enough. He's just not good enough. And it's the same for a lot of these players. They're way out of their depth. And you've got a manager leading them who is so far out of his depth, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm actually embarrassed now. I'm embarrassed that this guy is managing my football team because, look, there's probably going to be a point of the season where he wins a game. Look, I don't know if it's going to be Brighton. I don't know if it's going to be Liverpool. I don't know if it's going to be Tottenham or Nottingham Forest. He's probably going to win one of those games. And people will go, oh, look, see, he's all right. They beat that team 3-0. He's a good manager or something. And you'd be like, please don't pull the wool over my eyes. We can see 3 goals a game on average. We don't score any goals anymore. The players just look totally bored. They look totally disinterested. They're clapping on the sideline. I said it last week. They're clapping on the sideline when Liam Rosenior is becoming my biggest pet hate. I can't listen to him. I can't watch him. I'm really struggling. And I like managers. Generally speaking, I give everyone a fair crack. And I wanted to give Liam Rosenior a fair crack. But I know what's going to happen. I've got a funny feeling we're going to win like 2 games at the end of the season. And the club are going to go, oh, look, it's all right, actually. We've got the Europa League or something. We might not do that. But let's just say that happens. Oh, look, it's okay. It wasn't his fault. Oh, don't worry about he lost like 10 games in the running, and not including the Champions League. You know, we've got the FA Cup next week, which is another conversation altogether. But we're going to start the season next year with him, and we're going to get 3 months in. We're going to be in the exact same position as we're in now. We're going to sack that manager, and then we're going to go through this all over again next season. This is our Igor Tudor moment. Spurs appointed a manager to get them out of the shit. And whether you thought that appointment was good or bad, it doesn't matter. They thought it was the right decision at the time. They played, what, how many games was it? I'm going to guess 6. And I think he lost all of them. And showed no signs of the team getting any better. If anything, they were getting worse. And the players basically hated him. Well, I think this is your chance, Chelsea, to do something about it right now. And whether it's before the end of the season or at the end of the season, but if you think that this guy is going to turn your fortunes around next season, I would be absolutely gobsmacked. And yeah, that's how I feel about it. I'm afraid I'm very, very pessimistic about Liam Rosenior. Very pessimistic about, like I said, half of this squad, if not more than half of this squad. The backroom staff don't fill me with any kind of confidence, and I just feel as though the club is in a real bad place now. And I thought about this earlier today as I was going around at work this morning, and I thought, do you know what? We've had some poor seasons in the past. The one that strikes me as one that I remember was when I think it was Jose's second spell, and I want to say it was his second season, when we still had players like Ivanovic and Terry and things, but I think they're all still there. But that something had gone wrong, something had happened within that squad. It definitely wasn't harmonious. The manager himself, I think Jose had kind of lost the plot a little bit. And we were kind of languishing. We were sort of in that 14th, 15th, 16th position for a while. I think we ended up finishing 10th that year, which is madness when you think back. But you know what? I could see a way out of it. I could see a way out. With this Chelsea team, I cannot see a way out of it. I feel as though we are really peddling water. And it just looks bad from the protest, which we'll come on to in another voice note, I'm sure, to just the club from top to bottom. It just feels like poison. I'll be honest with you. It's not an enjoyable place to be. I'm going next weekend with my children to the semi-final at Wembley. I hope for that one-off game we can kind of put all the nonsense to one side and attempt to get ourselves to a cup final. And I want my children to have a really good day out. So I'm kind of trying to see past some of the crap until next week. But I'll leave you with this. What happened to a Chelsea player getting a new contract and someone like Colin Hutchinson, the late, great Colin Hutchinson, by the way, who sadly passed away last week. And goodness me, the players that man signed in his tenure at the club was unbelievable. Just maybe Chris will post a list of the players that Colin Hutchinson signed to give you some idea of how well that man did his business compared to this lot. But also when Marina Granovskaya was obviously the chief exec or whatever her role was at the time at the club, she would say, right, okay, Didier, 5-year deal, bang, it was done. Picture taken, handshake, across the desk, and contract with a pen in hand, smiling faces, job done. A little bit on the club website about we're proud to have John, Terry, Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard, whoever, Eden Hazard, signing a new contract with the club. We look forward to many more years of greatness from these people. Let's go and get it. Did anyone see this week the Moises Caicedo transfer contract extension? It was the biggest load of bullshit I've ever seen in my entire life. Again, with the manager right at the helm. Now, whether he's been told to do this or whether or not he's done it off his own back, I don't know. But basically, every Chelsea player in the squad was in a video room with a great big monitor. And Liam Rosenior walks in and he goes, "I've got something to say. You know, this player, he's so good, blah, 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 a load of old crap. We're so proud that he signed this new contract." Whee! The players go up and you big cheers and whatever. And then his wife comes in with his child, and then there's a video montage, and Moy then gives a speech about his contract. "Oh, I love the club and this and that." But what a load of old shit. I've never seen so much crap in all my life. Get the deal done. You're on a load of money. Stop having the need to have your ego stroked at every possibility. Not that Moises Caicedo, I would suggest, wanted this, but it's another club PR stunt. It's just garbage. Garbage. I don't want to see it. I don't care for it. And why the hell, as a player, do I want to sit in a video room and watch clips of Moises Caicedo tackling people? Oh my God, the world we live in is so dry. Oh my word. What happens to men being men and actually just kind of coming out there and just doing their job properly and getting the fuck on with it, opposed to all this entertainment? It's not entertainment or a TV series. It's what people really care about. They go to work Monday to Friday to get their tickets for Saturday and Sunday and whatever the games are, because they are desperate for their team to play well and do well and actually win something. And if you're a lower league club and you're not a team that's got financial backing and stuff, I know that stuff's not easy, but still, those people will get up for work every single day, work their their arses off for hard-earned money to go and watch their team play. I don't want to be kind of gaslit into thinking that this is the new way. It's crap. Cut it out. It's nonsense. Chris, it's over to you.
I hate to say it, guys. It's Chris here on the Sunday, day after the game. I think there's a really, really good chance that we don't win again this season. And Jay might be right. We might well pick up a win against Forest or Spurs or something, but I think there's an equally good chance that we don't. And it does feel really a lot like the end of that Graham Potter season, doesn't it? Where obviously Frank took over. I mean, a shout for Frank, by the way. He's obviously he's done an amazing job at Coventry, and the way that he celebrated that and was so emotional on Friday night was pretty special, I think, as a Chelsea fan who loves Frank Lampard and named my son Frankie after Frank Lampard. Seeing that moment for him was really special. But going back to where I was, he obviously took over at the end of that season, the impossible job, and it's quite clear the players had given up. I think he came in, and the clips resurfaced recently, didn't they? And Lampard was saying that the standards had dropped. Basically, the players weren't fit enough. The players weren't fit. I don't think that's the problem necessarily now, but certainly the standards look like they're low, and the players just don't look. I mean, as Joe said, they don't look interested. They don't look like they're buying into whatever Liam Rosenior's saying to them, and it looks really, really poor. That season under Frank, we won one game in the final 10 or so, which was that away win at Bournemouth, who were struggling themselves at the time, and that was it. And this has a very similar feel to it. That's 6 defeats in 7 games, the one win being against Port Vale, by the way. And we're breaking records. We're breaking records in terms of consecutive Premier League defeats without scoring. It is as bad as I can remember it being as a Chelsea fan. It really is. And I think I've kind of gone through the whole journey here from being sort of really frustrated a few weeks ago with some of the performances, some of the individuals and things like that, to then being a bit angry. And obviously the protests that I'll talk a bit more about later, but the protests kind of yesterday, I think anger is the word about the feeling around the club. I think I've come through that, and I'm actually just sad. And watching the game last night, I just felt a bit sad about where Chelsea are right now as a club, and how hard it is to identify with the club that I love and feel like, yeah, that is my team. And I think maybe a week or so ago, I said that it was maybe the lowest that I can remember Chelsea being as a club since I started supporting us in about 93. So what's that? Came up to 33 years. And I genuinely think it is. We've obviously had worse teams in that time, but in terms of just a feeling around being really pessimistic about us, this is as low as I can remember being. And I'm going to talk in a second about what needs to happen and the changes and maybe some of the concerns, but there have to be changes. There have to be major changes. Talk briefly about the game. I think Joe's done a really good summary there. It was a year on from the Fulham game at Craven Cottage last year, where Chelsea obviously 1-0 down with 20 minutes to go, if that. I think maybe less actually, maybe 10 minutes. When Tariq George scores that great goal and then Pedro Neto scores another great goal and we win the game 2-1. And that was the Kickstarter of our really good end to the season to then get Champions League. It was the moment, wasn't it? Everything turned on that goal. And last night it felt similar. I think if we had won last night, and let's face it, we could have done and probably should have done if we look at the raw stats. But as Joe said, the eye test showed you that as bad as United were, Chelsea weren't much better. I think the fact was they were just not as bad as us on the night. But they were terrible as well. But it felt like if we won last night, maybe we can be a bit of a Kickstarter. Maybe we can go on a little run towards the end of the season because there's so few games. You just need a bit of momentum and then maybe you go and win at Brighton and then who knows. That's gone now. And the predictions I did a while ago was based on that happening. That hasn't happened. Chelsea might not win the game again this season. We could fall as low as 10th or 11th this year. That is how insane it could get. And then they have to change Liam Rosenior now. Let's say it as it is. As Joe forecasted what could well happen, I think he's right. I just really hope it doesn't. There's no way that Liam Rosenior is good enough to run the club. There's no way that he's surrounded himself with the staff that is experienced enough to do this job. And they have to make that change. The one good thing is, I think they will. I don't think they'll be afraid to make a change, to be fair. I think it's one thing we have seen under this ownership is that they will change the manager. The fear, however, is who they bring in, because the track record is equally as clear in the fact that they do not seem to want to bring in a manager with experience, maybe a bit of an ego, maybe on a higher salary, all those kind of things they don't seem to want to do. And I was sort of joking last night thinking how much our levels have dropped as a fan base and as a club, that under Roman, we'd bring in manager after manager, but they'd always have an elite pedigree. And I remember, for example, not really wanting Thomas Tuchel when he came in. Obviously, Frank had been sacked. And I remember looking at Tuchel going, well, what has he won really? He's won, what do you want to do? One German league. He's won a couple of French leagues with PSG. That doesn't count. And he got to a Champions League final, but come on, we can do better than that. And I remember feeling similar about Conte, not really been sure about Conte. Like, yeah, he's done a right job with Italy, and he did well at Juventus, but this is different in the Premier League. Is he really what we want? How the standards have dropped. And I look back at that and laugh. I mean, obviously I was wrong anyway with both of those two, very, very wrong. But the standards that we're looking at now, we're bringing in the likes of Graham Potter, Enzo Maresca, Liam Rosenior. They've got no track record or pedigree. They've got no connection to Chelsea either. It's bleak, really. And this was all too predictable, wasn't it? We called it when Rosenior was appointed, that the second it went wrong, it would go very wrong. And the fact is, it was quite clear that he did the classic new manager bounce. He started really well, and to be fair, he did, and he got us playing. We said it on the pod. He got us playing a bit more expensive football. It was enjoyable to watch. We were scoring goals. He'd really turned around João Pedro into a real threat, and there were some really entertaining games in that little period. But that classic new manager bounce moment has gone, and Chelsea are now faced with an untenable situation, untenable in terms of where it's left us. And the club have to put egos aside. They have to change the manager. and they have to change the sporting directors. It has to be a root and branch change from the top to the bottom of the club, and we go from there. I mean, let's talk briefly about the protest. That was really good turnout. It was great to see the Strasbourg fans over as well. BlueCo aren't going anywhere at the moment, so calling for BlueCo out, I think it's a clear message and an understandable message, but they're not selling the club tomorrow or in this summer. So let's focus on what they can do, and they can show that they're willing to listen. They can show that they're willing to make significant changes, and that has to be on the sporting side. Briefly on the game, two things I'm just going to add in really to the mix. I completely agree on Hato, by the way. I thought he was a shining light, and it was great to see him continue to play, actually, and hope he does continue to play. Maybe it's time to take Fofana out, so frankly, and put in someone Achimpong alongside him, because at least then we can sort of see a couple of young guys who could be the future of this club. Cole Palmer, obviously quotes came out before the game that he was very loyal to staying. Then they got muddied a little bit because he did an interview just before saying, well, of course, it depends on us being in the Champions League. Well, frankly, Cole, your performances this season are one of the reasons that we're not in the Champions League. And I know people can think I'm being really harsh on him. I love Cole Palmer. I love the guy. I think he's a genius, and he has been a joy since he came into the Chelsea side. But he has been awful for many, many of the games this season. Has had little fleeting moments of genius that we've seen from Cole, but nowhere near enough of them. And yesterday, I thought summed up how bad he's been so often this season. He created basically nothing, and actually wasn't even showing for the ball like the old Cole would have done. Where look back at a game like Man United, actually, that great 4-3 win under Pochettino, where it was really Cole who dragged us back into the game and obviously scored that amazing late winner in one of the great nights at the Bridge. That was all about him wanting the ball, getting on the ball, doing great things. Yesterday, I was watching and he was sort of shying away from the ball at times. And when he did do it, he just doesn't look like he's got that spark that he had. Again, players come in and out of form. He's had injuries, etc. I'm not calling him out and blaming in that respect. That can happen. But don't use words to suggest that if Chelsea don't get Champions League, then maybe he'll look elsewhere, because, again, it may have been taken out of context, those quotes, but you are integral to us getting Champions League, and you're not performing well enough to even consider the fact that you could go and get another job. I wouldn't even consider offers, frankly. Final thing on this point is just, I have to mention Garnacho as well. I mean, if you're a United fan, I mean, you're watching his performance and laughing and loving it every moment of it, aren't you? It couldn't have been worse. And he could have come on trying to make a point. The only point he made is that United did an amazing job upgrading on him in the summer with Mbeumo and Cunha, because he was dreadful. And he's another one where, like Jamie Gittins, like many others, they need to put their egos to the side in the summer, admit they made a mistake, and try and move on from some of these guys very, very quickly. Because for quite a while this season, we've been talking a lot about Chelsea needing a goalkeeper and a centre-back in the summer, and looking at how we can improve next year. I think the problems are a little bit deeper, and I think in attack as well, we need some significant upgrades as well, don't we? We'll come on to that in obviously a proper episode, but there are problems across the squad, and you just looked at it, as Joe said, 1-0 down, and just knew we weren't going to get back into the game. You just knew it. And actually, with about 20 minutes to go, all of our puff had gone, and we created basically nothing. And there was nothing on the bench to think that, oh, if you put him on, it could change things. It was really, really bad. I'll finish on a positive. I'll try and finish on a positive. Man United are the positive, because this time a year ago, they were as bad as you can imagine. They were, what did they finish? 16th, maybe 16th, 17th last year. They were dismal in every way. Horrendous performance in the final of the Europa League against Spurs. The club looked like they were going absolutely nowhere. And look what happens. A few well chosen transfer targets, not genius targets. Everyone knew what a good player Cunha was. Everyone knew what a good player Mbeumo was. A manager change with Michael Carrick coming in, the guy who knows the club, raises the standards, talks about what it means to play for Man United. And yeah, they're not the great Man United side, but they're going to finish third this season and going to certainly feel like they've got something to build on in next season going forward. So it just shows how quickly and arguably easily things can change at the club. And Chelsea have the potential to do that next year. Someone like Levi Colwill will feel effectively like a new signing. We think Penders might well come in and goal if they decide to go for it, but if not, I'm sure they're bringing another keeper. There are some positives there, but they have to fix as I said earlier, the top of the club with the sporting directors and the manager. And personally, I would go out tomorrow and appoint Cesc Fabregas. He might not want to come. You might have to persuade him, but I would go and do that. Let Frank continue his work at Coventry. Go and appoint Cesc Fabregas, someone who knows the club, is a young manager, so he's going to give them that kind of feel that they can build a project around it. But it's not Liam Rosina, is it? He is not the man for that job. And at least with Cesc, you feel like the fans will immediately buy into his ideas and feel like there's something worth getting behind, because at the moment, the mood at the Bridge is as bad as I can ever remember it. Oh, thanks for listening in. I think the fact that you guys are here listening shows that you're part of the hardcore, because to even want to think about Chelsea right now is hard enough, isn't it? So thanks for being part of it with us, and hopefully we are providing some sort of therapy through this for you. But I'll hand back to Joe, and when I come back, I'll talk about the other stuff that came out this week about the financial picture at the club.
Good afternoon, and welcome into my second voice note of the weekend. And yeah, Chris makes a lot of very good points, and none of which I really disagree with, to be quite honest with you. I don't want to really speak about the protest as a whole, because I know Chris has got a few things that he wants to speak about. I might loosely touch on it, but for the time being, I'll leave that in the distance just for now. But I think it's obviously very alarming. We have a protest, and there'll be those supporters around the country, maybe across the world, going, why on earth are Chelsea protesting against their owners when they spent, all this money, they've been promised all these things? And I think when you're outside of Chelsea, it's very easy to kind of maybe mock and go, well, they sound entitled, or they sound like they, just because they're not winning the league this year or whatever, that they're throwing their toys out of the pram. But I think what the bigger problem is the fan base and the supporters are just finally and completely and utterly fed up with the way the club is going and how it's being run. It's all very well spending money, but spending it hand over fist on many, many players, and there are so many, for you just to see them walk out the door for a little profit maybe, or for the ones that you buy for a lot of money and end up turning out to be complete and utter disasters. Now, you're going to get one or two wrong, but Chelsea have got so many things wrong when it comes to their transfer policy, and you can see the logic behind some of it. I think if you stood back and put a very neutral head on, you could sort of say, well, buying that player for this price and maybe moving him on in 2 years and making double your money on that all sounds great, but in reality, it doesn't really happen. For example, they bought Garnacho. They thought they were getting a very good deal for Manchester United. £40 million. You go, well, he's a young Argentinian winger, has lots of potential. Again, that word potential gets thrown up an awful lot. But, let's keep to it. And we think if he comes and plays for Chelsea, let's say he plays 30 games for Chelsea this season, scores, let's be fair, let's be realistic, scores 12 to 13 goals, makes 8 assists, 9 assists, he'll be worth not any money the season after, 50, 55 million. If someone wants to come and buy him, we'll move him on. Now, again, on paper, it sounds like that's a good deal. Why wouldn't you do it? The thing is, if you get a player that comes in, a winger, let's just say, who goes and scores 15 goals for you, creates a ton of assists, or even a moderate amount of assists, and looks like a player that you can trust and rely on for the future, why would you then want to sell him? It's kind of a bit of a backwards model to begin with. And I think they've underestimated, the owners, how hard it is to find players like that. And if you do, like I say, why on earth would you want to get rid of them? So, yeah, I also find the fact that buying a number of wingers for ludicrous amounts of money isn't a great tactic. And I'm just talking about one isolated position here. You have Mudryk, somewhere in the region of £60 million, could rise to 80 million if he'd hit all his metrics and targets. Well, clearly he's not going to do that, but it's still 60 odd million pounds. Jamie Gittins is 55 odd million pounds. Garnacho, 40 million pounds. Pedro Neto, 54 million pounds. And I could go on, and there's loads more. So it's this crazy number of players that we buy, and in a weird way, these are the ones that we've kind of brought in to be first team players. There's a whole load behind them that aren't even going to get near the first team, but we're kind of expected just to go like one year it's going to be Mudryk and it's going to be Estevão. The year after it's going to be Neto and this other guy, and the year after it's going to be Quenda and somebody else. And it's just like there's no stability in that side. We've mentioned for years about this centre-half policy. You know, go and get yourself a centre-half. Go and get yourself a goalkeeper. And no, we go and buy £55 million on Jamie Gittins. Why do you sell Noni Madueke for 50 to go and get Gittins for 55? Again, whatever you think of Noni Madueke, and I'm not saying I'm his biggest fan by any means, but you could see a player there developing under Chelsea, under Maresca. You could see that. Now, whether he'd done the same type of season he's had at Arsenal this year for Chelsea, who knows? He's had an okay year. I don't think he's pulled up any trees in terms of goals scored. He can frustrate the absolute life out of you. And I'm not sitting here saying Noni Madueke is the answer to Chelsea Football Club. I'm not. Don't hear what I'm not saying. However, there is this kind of just belief that the owners and the sporting directors can just go and pluck anybody they like out of any club, pay whatever amount of money they want to, and they're going to turn that into gold. And as we've seen, I'd say 8 times out of 10 they get it completely and utterly wrong. The fact that we're looking at players like Nicholas Jackson coming back from loan from Bayern Munich as the answer. Now, Nicholas Jackson has probably had a fairly decent loan at Bayern Munich. He's probably learnt a lot. I'm not talking about what he's done on the field. I think he's scored a few goals. I think he clattered someone the other day and got himself a red card. I think he broke somebody's leg, quite frankly. So has he learnt from that part of his game? Doesn't sound like it too much. But Nicholas Jackson is a decent striker of the ball, a decent player, scores good goals now and again, but also goes terribly missing in games and can go on streaks of runs without scoring a goal. But compare him to Liam Delap, and it's like, goodness me, he looks like prime Pele. So it makes you kind of pine for a player that isn't at your club anymore. And when he comes back, he still might not be the answer. And Chelsea will be in this constant loop of chasing what is maybe an average to good player back to your club, because the one you've got currently is absolutely pathetic and useless and not up to the task of what he's being paid to do. But there's no guarantees that that player's any good either. So you filter this guy back into the side and you think to yourself, this is going to change now. You think, well, it's going to be exactly the same as it was 2 years ago when he came. It'll be very, very similar. And also, when you treat people quite poorly, do they want to come back to your club and really give you 100% like they were given before they left? So, look, that's a player in sort of isolation, really. But the amount of money and time and resources that we've wasted in most of this squad is basically embarrassing. And you're really just hoping and praying that Cole Palmer is the finished article and he can somehow replicate his form of 2 seasons ago. And it was 2 seasons ago now. It's been that long. He wasn't great last season. He didn't really score that many goals. And when he did score, they were from penalties and stuff. So, you're prepared to forgive and forget some things because you think, you can't always be brilliant all the time. But frankly, you do start to wonder, will he ever get back to those levels? We hope he can, of course, and no one's outing Cole Palmer as a bad player or questioning his loyalty or anything like that. But it's amazing how suddenly there's a protest and then 2 days later there's a fluff piece on Cole Palmer coming out and saying that why would Reece James sign a 6-year contract if he didn't think that the club wasn't moving in the right direction? Why would I be coming out here and saying that I love the club and I don't want to move and stuff? It's almost like they've been forced to do it because they know what's coming. Barley comes out in some New York Times show or interview that he gave over there and sort of speaks about, maybe we got some things wrong, but we got loads of things right, by the way. You go, well, have we? What really have you got right? I can't really see it. And you can talk about the Club World Cup and you can talk about the Conference League. West Ham have won the Conference League. Nottingham Forest are probably going to win the Conference League this season. You can't look at that competition in isolation and say that's a good thing. And look, we all said last year when we won it, we were pleased to win it, purely because we've been starved of silverware for quite a long time. And equally, we felt as though it was a springboard for the club to move on and actually kick on this season and do something impressive. But quite frankly, we've fallen so far behind some of the other sides. It really is an embarrassing sort of prospect of where we might finish this season. I was looking at the Brighton-Tottenham game yesterday, and even though Brighton didn't win that match, I was just like, they play such good football. They move it so well. They create spaces for each other. They play this really fast, entertaining football. It's so fun to watch. And you can argue they overplay at the back. Brighton do a little bit of what we do sometimes. They just overplay and overplay. They get caught, and that's really how Spurs scored both their goals. But you just kind of go, they have a plan and they have a strategy and it works for them. But it's Brighton. You know, we've sort of gone down this road of following what they did because, you know, they can seem to find and buy players for 20 million quid or so and sell them for money like we did for Caicedo when we paid 115 million pounds for him. That doesn't happen every day of the week. They manage to do it somehow because I think people always think they can go and get their player from Brighton, or if you're a side like Bournemouth, for example, we feel as though we can go and get your player, but like Semenyo did with Man City did with Semenyo. So when you're Chelsea, we're not looking to sell our best player to Man United or Man City. Does that make sense? We're actually looking to hold on to that player and him be a player for the next 5 or 6 or 10 years at the club. And as Chris has rightly pointed out, I think in the past, if he hasn't said it on the podcast, he certainly said it to me. If you've got a player in whoever, you can name your player, doesn't really matter, and you think he's worth 80 or 90 million pounds, just because you think he's worth that, it doesn't mean that someone's prepared to pay that. And the teams that are around the world now that can afford to pay that money are dwindling. And even teams such as PSG and Real Madrid and stuff, they don't really look to pay that money anymore. They realise that it's almost a wasted player. It's like, if we spend 90 million pounds on someone, they've got to be an absolute guarantee. Harry Kane, when he went to Bayern Munich, was a guarantee. You knew he would score X amount of goals every season without fail. That not happening would have been a shock to me. It would have been a shock to probably just about everybody around the world. So if you know you can get a player like that and have him for what Bayern have had him now 3-4 seasons, it pays for everything. And he pays for himself. But we're paying £115 million for Caicedo, no guarantee. £107 million for Fernandes, no guarantee. £60+ million for Mudryk, no guarantee. Fofana, £70 million, no guarantee. You see where I'm going with this, and there's loads more. Jeremy Gittins, £56 million, no guarantee. We're paying like Bayern Munich money for Kane. With all of these players have got absolutely no guarantee of coming to Chelsea and producing any kind of quality, sustained football for years to come. I mean, teams must be laughing. They must see us pay this money for people and go, why the bloody hell are they paying that? You know, you can imagine someone like Real Madrid negotiating a deal for Fofana for about 30 million quid and going, we'll pay that. That's punt money. But Chelsea pay like £40 million over the asking price and sort of are saying to themselves, he's going to be our first team player for years and years and years. It's never going to do that. And then yet on the flip side, we're poncing around in the bargain basement paying £30 million for Liam Delap. And also, there was no way in the world anyone could have foreseen that João Pedro at £50 million was going to be a success, because even though João Pedro has been the sort of the shining light on the year, for me, certainly, was no resemblance of like, this guy can come in and score X amount of goals for us. We were just shooting into the dark and just hoping. Luckily, João Pedro has had a good season. But again, if you're these players, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what Cole Palmer says. The club can't continue to spend at the rate they're spending, not qualify for the biggest European competitions in the world, and expect to keep everybody and then double down Egbali said, we're going to go and buy established Premier League players. And you go, who? We've got no money because we spent it all. I mean, I don't know where they're going to find it and how they're going to work a system where we're already under scrutiny from the FA and UEFA for basically overspending and maybe bending the rules a few years ago or whatever. So how on earth do you expect to go and pay all these millions of pounds? Because everybody knows that we need someone. The only way you're lucky enough to get out of the situation is if you find some free transfers. If Harry Kane was selling on a free transfer from Bayern and you went, do you know what, we'll have a go at him. And Ken, it's never going to happen and he wouldn't come to us. But you get my point is if you can get lucky and you can somehow persuade someone to come, but there will be people looking at this project, which I hate saying, we're not a project, we're a football club, and going, well, I've seen what you've done, and quite frankly, I don't like it, and I'm not too sure that I don't want to go there. And I think we've probably, if anything, put people off coming opposed to the other way around. And the only sort of players you are going to get now are potential players. And again, it's a rinse and repeat cycle, and I don't see it changing. I think Egbali said all this week about buying established players because the protest was coming. And then, look, if they do that, then, fair play to them, and they would have listened and they would have changed something. But the way I see it is they're just not in a position where they can really guarantee anything due to the major cock-ups in players they've bought for exuberant amounts of money. And shifting them off the wage bill is going to be, I think, almost impossible. Because again, I think if I'm a team in the Premier League or across the world and I want to buy a certain type of player, let's just say Enzo Fernandez, I'm lowballing you all the way to the bank. I'm not going to offer you £80 million for him. I'll come in at 45 and see how the ground lies and see how well Chelsea can resist that. Because if we need to sell someone, we might have to. But quite frankly, I'm not overpaying for any of the Chelsea players. And if there's one thing these sporting directors could learn, it's about someone like Marina Granovskaya, who could buy a player and flip them for some daft amount of money at the end of their contract, because she had a great negotiating power and she had teams eating at the palm of her hand. And we used to say it as a group of friends, Chelsea fans, and we go, how the hell has she sold that player for that amount of money? How has she done that? He's at the end of his career and she's got 30, 40, 50 million pounds for someone. And back then, well, that was a lot of money. And it's just madness how we're still offering these incentivised contracts when if you're a big club, you don't do that. You're basically saying, I'm buying you because you're the best out there. They didn't pay Mark Gay, whether you think he's a good player or not, right? Just hear me out. Man Utd didn't pay Mark Gay, Donnarumma and Semenyo $100,000 a week, and if you do quite well, we'll give you another $100,000 a week at the end of the year, or or whatever. If you win a trophy, we'll give you another X amount of million for winning that. They said, no, we're going to pay this amount of money for you, and we're going to pay you that amount of wages because we think in your position you're the best currently out there. That's what they did, and that's what they've done, and that's what lots of teams do. Isak at Liverpool, Ekitike at Liverpool, Wirtz at Liverpool. Whatever you think of these players, don't worry about if you like them or you don't like them. That's not the point. They're saying to them players, I'm banking on you being my number one striker or my number one attacking midfield player or my number one right winger, goalkeeper. But Chelsea are just going, well, we'll give you 80 grand, and if you do all right, we'll give you another 40 grand, and if you do all right then, we'll do this. If you win this, we'll do that. Players, that sounds all right when you're young, but as you're finding out, Enzo Fernandez already wants a new contract. Chelsea were giving new contracts out to Nicholas Jackson after 1 year at the club. It just sounds fucking stupid, and quite frankly, it's getting a little bit boring. And I think I said last season, or the start of this season, I have got transfer sickness. Like I can't watch Chelsea buy another player. It makes me feel a little bit queasy. And you find out it's some Ukrainian nobody, no disrespect to Mykhailo Mudryk, and you're paying £60 million for him. Arsenal wanted to pay that money for him. Let them do that deal. But it's almost like we got that thing where we can't let him have him. You can. Other teams can buy players and they will make mistakes. But it was almost like someone came in as a slight nudge to Chelsea to say, we want to buy him now. And Chelsea went, no, let's do the deal today. Let's do it for this amount of money. And quite frankly, it's fucking embarrassing. Put that money towards all the other money that you've wasted and buy 3 or 4 quality players and stop messing around with all the bloody under 19 players that we keep getting in, and build a proper squad of proper players who are willing to fight for the badge. Because there's almost zero fight in this team. It's gone so bad, so quick, and I kind of felt like it would do if we didn't pick up results, and you were sort of hoping you'd pick up results more than guaranteeing you'd pick up results, which is never a good place to be. And it's hard watching all the top Premier League teams, whether you think they're doing well or not doing well, they're all spending what I would class as good money on established players, and yet we're the ones going around and spending all this money, similar money to them, for people that we've never heard of. And these teams just must see us coming. As I've said before, of course, pick up odd players here and there. If you can get Estevão for £40 million and you think he's going to be some world-class player from Brazil, absolutely go and do that deal. Like 1 or 2 here and there is fine. Most teams do that. But stop trying to reinvent football and tell everybody you're so bloody clever, because you look absolutely ridiculous now. And the egg on our face is just beginning to stink to high heaven. Looking at the football today, the results have gone completely against us. Not that I'm really interested in it at the moment, quite frankly, but Aston Villa getting a 8th minute winner, and Liverpool getting a 100th minute winner with Van Dijk today. You know, they've pushed themselves further away. Man United obviously beating us, pushing themselves further away. So yeah, the chances of Chelsea doing anything this season is gone, and clearly the players' heads look miles away from really being any kind of force going into the last remaining games. But the proof really will be in the pudding for these owners and the sporting directors in the summer. And Chris is right, you know, they've got to be held to account. If Chelsea end up falling down the league and finishing way outside the European places altogether, it is embarrassing considering you've just won the Club World Cup. And I know it's not a major trophy in terms of a Champions League and stuff, but in the way you were going into the season, you basically said to yourselves, you know, we're up there with some of these other sides, even though maybe they weren't going at full tilt and America was extremely hot and maybe that didn't suit a lot of the players. I'm not trying to take away the victory for Chelsea in America, because it was a good achievement. And there's no going around it. And I'm not having the fact that because we won it, it's some friendly tournament and no one gives a shit about it. Teams wanted to win it, and let's get that right. I think that's a common misconception that everyone didn't want to go there and win, which is bollocks. But you had all the tools then to go and get yourself a really good sponsorship deal for the next 2 or 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and once again we turned down that money. And Chris is right, we've probably given up £150 million worth of shirt deals alone by not taking any that have been basically landed on our table. Because once again, the Chelsea ownership feel as though they are worth more than they are. I'm telling you, you're not. You are what you are. You're basically a dwindling club at this rate, and you need to do an awful lot to get yourself anywhere near the top positions next season, because there's going to be a load of teams buying players while you're trying to sell your players, and the good ones might have already been gone by the time you get around to doing it. So they have an awful lot to address, almost too much to address at once, and they can only hope and salvage an FA Cup in this current campaign. And quite frankly, I don't really see that happening. I think Leeds are playing very, very well at the moment. I hope we can go to Wembley next week and win. Like I say, I'm taking my 2 boys there, which I'm really excited to do that. But I'm not expecting very much. And if we do win somehow, I mean, manage to play probably Man City in the final, let's be frank. I mean, who's going to foresee that Man City are going to lose against us? But you never know. If they end up cocking up the league, then their heads might not quite be where it's at. But Man City have always had this good reputation of when they are down and they've lost one competition, they are very good at going and grabbing the next one. So, yeah, it's a crazy season. If Chelsea were to pick up the FA Cup somehow, the ownership would say that they've done really well and they've really recruited well. Let me remind you, you wouldn't have played a Premier League team until the semi-final. So you can't really stand there and say that we've done a great job. And if they do attempt to do that, I will fucking lose my shit. And yes, we are in a really poor place at the moment, but I will never give up on my team. I will always support them. I will always be there week in, week out, wherever I can to kind of cheer them on and hope they always do well. But they are really fast becoming a hard watch, and all the stuff that comes out of the club from the owners and the sporting directors just makes you want to be sick in your mouth, and it's really hard to get behind. But like I say, when they're your team, and there is nothing you can do about it. Chris, I'll leave you to finish up, mate. Please, if you can, speak about the protest a little bit if you know more about it than I do and how it went. And my last little piece here on the owners is, we're not some swanky cigar club that you can just come in, have a secret handshake with your mate and walk out. We are people that care the most you can ever imagine about a thing that we all, somehow, we don't know each other, but we all come together every single week to support our team on, because that's the team we were brought up with, round the corner, kicking a ball against the wall, and you can't take that away from us. Be the landlord you said you'd be, spend the money in the right ways, look at the new stadium, look at a front shirt sponsor, look at how we're investing money into these consistent potential players, and maybe change your strategy somewhat and get some good experience into this side. Stop making all our best players walk out the club, because they will do if you don't fix this very, very soon. And quite frankly, stop fleecing the fans of all your fucking stupid £1,000 dugout clubs and stuff. We're not idiots, and stop treating us like we are.
Yeah, recording this just as the final whistle's gone in the Man City Arsenal game, actually, and Kai Havertz, my friend, wow, what a chance he had at the end there. And I mean, we know, don't we, as Chelsea fans, having tried to win the league with Kai Havertz as our centre forward, that when it comes to the crunch, he's not good enough, and they've just found out that the hard way. I'll come on to the Premier League a little bit more in a second, really, and what those kind of late goals from, of course, Tammy Abraham and Liverpool might mean for Chelsea as we obviously go to Brighton on Tuesday. But I want to just talk a little bit about the owners. Obviously, the protest yesterday was pretty well attended by all accounts. I think it was about 1,000, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people turned out, from depending on who you believe in. Strasbourg fans came over as well, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, the message is pretty clear that neither sets of fans like the multi-club model, and that, you know, Egbali, Bowley, etc. aren't wanted at the club. Now, as I said earlier, I don't think that them leaving the club right now is a thing that's even worth talking about, because it's just not going to happen. What you hope is the message loud and clear is that we don't like the way you're running the club and that changes have to happen. I wanted to talk through something I teased earlier, which was some really interesting and concerning stuff that came out about how the club is being financed right now and what it might mean for the future. So this is kind of the undercurrent, I think, of some of the concerns around the club, because we all, as fans, most of us care. I mean, of course, we all care most of all about what happens on the pitch, don't we? Winning games, winning trophies, etc. And we all know how badly some of the money has been spent. Joe just talked about that. What we can also see off the pitch is how poor commercially things are, with not having a shirt sponsor so publicly for years. But there is a number that Chelsea fans probably need to be paying more attention to right now. It's not being talked about a huge amount, and it's not the points tally in the league, not the transfer budget, but it's £1 billion, and it's quietly growing whether the team wins or loses. In 2023, a firm called Heirs Management injected 400 million into Chelsea's parent company. So this gets quite technical, so forgive me for the detail, but basically the interest rate on that 400 million is about 13% a year, and it gets added to the debt pile every year. So it's like a credit card at 13%, where you're making no zero monthly payments and just watching the balance grow. So by 2033, which is the year it needs to be repaid, it's projected that debt will hit close to £1 billion. Now, what the reading of this debt kind of plays into, and what they think the kind of strategy has always been, is that they're betting on one or three things landing. So number one is that Stamford Bridge gets rebuilt. That was always such a big part of this takeover. And when you look back, actually, and I kind of rereading this, remembered the fact that it was a key part of the terms when Roman sold the club, was that a guarantee that a stadium project would be financed. And that was a key part of all of the bidders putting forward their plans for Chelsea. If you remember back then, there was sort of 4 or 5 serious bidders going for Chelsea. And I mean, ironically looking back, but at the time I was very pro the Bowley bid, not knowing so much about Egbali and Clearlake. I was very pro Bowley, and mainly because of what he'd done in American sport with the success on the pitch over there, and also with the stadiums. Obviously, Stamford Bridge, we know there's been dead silence on any progress there. But number one, Stamford Bridge gets rebuilt. Number two, the multi-club network of clubs, which, let's face it, this was Chelsea and Strasbourg, generates significant profit. And number three, third bet, is that global TV money keeps growing. All three of those things basically need to happen within 7 years. And I mean, the first two, Stamford Bridge and the the multi-club model, let's face it, isn't going very well. And global TV revenue, I think maybe when they bought the club, it would have been felt a pretty safe bet that would happen. But I don't think the Premier League as a product, and again, I hate to use that word, but as a product, I'm not sure it's ever been probably worse. And you've only got to watch something like the Bayern Munich Real Madrid game midweek. I don't know if people saw that, to see what almost a reminder of what good football looks like. And for those of us who watch a lot of Premier League week in, week out, you kind of get numb and used to the fact that this is what football is. And you watch a game like that with brilliant attacking sides, just going hell for leather to go and win the games, not an over-reliance on set pieces, the game free-flowing, etc. To think that, Premier League wasn't always the number one league as it is now. It often hasn't been. It used to be Serie A, and then it was probably La Liga. It might be that, Premier League's time in the sun sort of fades for a while again. So no guarantees. And if they don't, if these 3 bets don't come off, then Ayers is almost certainly to have options Bowley in the loan that convert their debt into an ownership stake in Chelsea. So basically, Bowley and Clearlake at that point get wiped out, and an American investment fund that most of us as Chelsea fans have never heard of ends up owning the club. That is a situation that could well come to pass. Off the pitch, I think the roads are clear enough. It's get Stamford Bridge rebuilt, find a way to start doing transfer business that actually makes money, and refinance the loan on more manageable terms. But there's a lot to do. On the pitch, as we've said before, it's really simple. Rehire sporting director, one, singular, that has actually got experience and has built a project before. Someone you can really, really back, and bring in a manager that you can build the future around. I mentioned Cesc earlier. Some people will be probably rolling their eyes at the idea of Fabregas because it's another young, inexperienced manager. I mean, if I'm being honest, my number one choice would be Diego Simeone. The idea of bringing him from Atletico would be a real throwback, wouldn't it, to what Chelsea used to be. To be honest, I just don't think it's even worth putting out. I just can't see it happening. But if you gave me a magic wand, Simeone coming in and managing this Chelsea side, I tell you what, he'd give us a team to be proud of again. But a key change in the dugout needs to happen. And I said it so many times, but Barley came out in the midweek speaking to an American conference again, saying a lot of the right things, saying that they've made mistakes and that things will change and people need to be patient, etc. That's all very nice, well and good. They are just words. Again, we need to see actions, but also speak to the fans directly. Come and speak to the fans through the website. Do whatever you want to do. I'm completely with Joe on the Casado thing. It was embarrassing. It was a bit cringy to watch that video, actually. But if it's Igbali and Bowley coming out and saying, look, we're going to speak to you. We saw the protest the weekend. Let's look down the lens at Chelsea fans on the website, on the app, etc. Do you know what? I think they would buy so much more good faith than they actually realise doing that. But they don't. And the disconnect between what's happening in the boardroom and the supporter feeling is dangerous. It's as bad as it has ever been as I can remember. Chelsea on Tuesday night then at Brighton. I'm not going to change what I think the first line I said on this pod was. I really can see us not winning a game again this season. I really can. At the same time, I am blue-eyed and optimistic till the day is done. And come Tuesday, as the team sheet comes out, I'll be there again thinking, oh, well, if we do win today, like I thought against Man United on Saturday, it could kickstart our season and this, that and the other. I just know that I will, and I can only hope. I've almost got, it sounds so bad, I'm almost tired of even thinking about the team selection. And earlier in the season, at this point, I'd give you my 11 and here's what I'd like to see because I was so excited with what we were doing. I don't even have the energy to do it for you. All I'm going to say is, clearly we pray that João Pedro is back. The Estevão injury sounds like a disaster, doesn't it? By all accounts, he was in tears at the end of the game. It sounds like hamstring. It sounds like his season could be over. Potentially his World Cup dreams. Let's hope not for him. But a disaster for him because he did look sharp. And Cole Palmer, we need to see you again, mate. There's 5 games left. We need you to actually show. He presumably wants to go to the World Cup desperately. If I'm Tuchel and I'm watching his performance yesterday, he's nowhere near my squad. So he's got 5 games in the Premier League left to put himself on the plane for the World Cup, I think. And I really hope he uses that as a motivation, if nothing else. But yeah, Chelsea have to try and hope and pray that we can get something at Brighton. I mentioned that I talk about the Premier League. There is a really interesting scenario playing out in the league. So Chelsea now, it's gone in terms of us trying to finish top 5. Let's face it. If it wasn't gone for us losing to Man United in our general recent form, obviously Villa and Liverpool winning late has put paid to that. We are now 7 points behind Liverpool, 10 points behind Villa, and 10 points behind Man United as well, with 5 games to go. We're not catching them. So we will not finish higher than 6th. But there is a very, very weird scenario, which it would almost be embarrassing, let's face it, to get in the Champions League through this route. But if Aston Villa win the Europa League, and of course they are favourites for the competition, they play Forest in the semi-final of that competition. If they win the Europa League, they get into the Champions League through the Europa League. And in this strange scenario, only if Aston Villa finish 5th, does it then mean that 6th in the Premier League gets into the Champions League. So this weird, sick feeling of Van Dijk scoring in the last minute for Liverpool against Everton is actually potentially good news for Chelsea, because Chelsea need Liverpool to finish above Villa, and they're only 3 points behind them, bear in mind. So we need Villa to finish 5th and win the Europa League. And of course, Chelsea have to then make sure we finish above the likes of Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton and Everton and Sunderland, actually, ironically. So all these teams are around us. And just have a little look at the league table, by the way, because Chelsea on 48 points, level on points with Brentford and Bournemouth, who I just mentioned, 1 point ahead of Brighton and Everton, and 2 points ahead of Sunderland, 3 points ahead of Fulham, who are down in 12th. So Chelsea have anywhere from 6th to 12th to play for this season. It could get worse than that, actually. It could get worse than that, because Newcastle are 6 points behind in 14th. But if Chelsea did want motivation, and let's face it, who knows where these players' heads are at, because we've seen very little of it on the pitch, then finding a way to win, let's say 3 or 4 of those final 5 games, and then ensure that you finish 6th, could still get into the Champions League. And then, as Joe said, if the owners try and portray that as success, we will all look at them and laugh, as we will if they win the FA Cup. But if that was to happen, you know what? At the end of the season, we'd probably go, yeah, all right, move on, but take it. And it's a miracle. And maybe sometimes you need a miracle in football. But honestly, if we don't win at Brighton on Tuesday, I don't think any of that even comes to pass. So that's the focus on Tuesday. Let's all try and get ourselves up for it once again. If you listen to this, as I said earlier, you're one of the hardcore, because you're still sticking in there just about with this team. And, you know, through the rain and shine, as the famous song goes, we will be there supporting our Chelsea, whatever happens, and we'll be doing this podcast till the end of time. So thank you for your support. Drop us an email at hello@1905podcast.com if you want to just share your woes or ideas with us. We always love hearing from you. We always reply to every email we get. And yeah, normally I say every little thing's going to be all right. You know what? If we win at Brighton on Tuesday, maybe it will be. We'll see you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.
here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.